I told everyone before, I am not making another video on Claire Redfield until I am requested. And I'm still sticking to that. This is not a video about Claire Redfield's character or personality or whatever. This is a video in response to an Ink Ribbon video where he suggested his ideas of a Code Veronica remake and how this could work. I went through his video, and the link of that video and all the other videos that I mentioned are in the description below. So please refer to those when you feel like finding a reference point that you guys need to look up. But I have my own take on this because apparently there's a new buzz after I made the previous video, I don't know, maybe like a year ago or something, about my thoughts on Resident Evil and the Code Veronica remake type of hype, which sort of died down. But ever since Resident Evil 4 got announced, there seems to be a rejuvenated hype. So, what is going on, everyone? This is your boy, the Veerside, the Bengal Dragon. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons, as all your support really helps me remain motivated to continue making a variety of different types of videos on this channel, and would also help this channel grow, and would I mean, it really would mean a lot because like I said, it's just a small click, but you know, it's positive feedback, it's positive reinforcement. So I'm just gonna give my 2 cents on this. And yes, this is an impromptu video, as you can tell. I didn't even bust out the good microphone, the Blue Yeti Nano. I did not bust that out. I'm just using my webcam microphone. But I believe what I need to say, it needs to be heard rather than seen. Because if people don't know, unfortunately, one of my videos got taken down, and I have a strike on my channel as of this recording. So I am not going to upload anything that contains any content that is copyrighted until that strike is taken down, which I believe is around March 5th or March 6th. But after that, I will have a barrage of videos. Like, I have more voice acting attempts. I have the Evil Within review. I have the Evil Within music video. So there is more content coming up. So please do stay subscribed. Now, this is what I personally feel on why Capcom skipped Resident Evil Code Veronica for Resident Evil 4. Although the hype around Code Veronica and the fan base was so great that there was a fan-made remake, or an attempted fan-made remake of Code Veronica, which unfortunately I don't think it got completed. And it honestly felt a little lackluster as well. But it just goes to show how much interest there is. Now, the reason I feel that this game specifically got overlooked, because one, Code Veronica is very unique in terms of one of the only Resident Evil original style games that focuses on character and character storytelling. Yes, they did a horrible job of it, but still, they tried. And two, this Claire Redfield, the 2019 Claire Redfield, keep in mind, they have to put this Claire in Code Veronica if that game gets remade. This Claire and the Resident Evil 2 original Claire, there is a huge difference in character and personality. The 2019 remake Claire is the one that most of the Western audience has like really messed up in terms of characterizing. I don't know why, but they don't seem to understand her from the in-game character and personality. They just go off some text, and regardless of the incongruency of the behavior, they will believe what's in the text. Okay. The 2019 Claire is the foul-mouthed, promiscuous Claire. Okay, who thinks that a biohazard is hell of a first date? Okay. The 1998 Claire, if she were any more of a good girl, she would actually wear a crucifix. And yes, I present evidence of that as well in one of my videos. But in a world where you have games so great in storytelling, like the first Last of Us, albeit I still think it's overrated because other games have told better stories. Okay, God of War 2018, Red Dead Redemption 1 and Red Dead Redemption 2, even The Evil Within. Oh man, Evil Within, the storytelling is unbelievable. Can Code Veronica remake hold up, considering that Capcom are not good at storytelling? And by the way, if you're wondering about Resident Evil as a franchise, Resident Evil is in such a position that they can have a bucket of poop and call that Resident Evil and that will still make a profit. Okay, it's in that position where they're too big to fail. It's like the WWE. They can put out a horrible product for years and they'll still make money hand over fist. Let's start with the story. First point, do not follow Darkside Chronicles. Darkside Chronicles downgrades Claire, Steve, and Alexia. Alfred got an upgrade, Wesker is irrelevant, Chris is almost irrelevant. Okay, Rodrigo's not even there in the game. Three of the main characters, Claire, Steve, and Alexia, got a huge downgrade in Darkside Chronicles. Do not use that as a reference point. Number two, one thing amongst so many other things, one of the things that everyone or almost everyone gets wrong about Code Veronica. And why I say they get it wrong, it is because the in-game evidence does not present it as such. Okay, listen, the creators, the directors, the narrators, they can come out and say whatever because they have an image to protect. Okay, and they have public opinion to be aware of. So their words cannot be relied upon completely. Okay, that is why focus on what is presented in game. And by the way, Ink Ribbon, I saw your BOW rounds video that you alluded to in the video that I'm responding to right now. But yes, one of the things most people get wrong. Yes, most of Code Veronica is about family. That is correct. But Alfred and Alexia's relation does not mirror Claire and Chris's relation. Just because they're siblings, it does not qualify. Okay, then you can put any random siblings there and say that, oh, there's a connection because that they're siblings. Okay, Claire and Chris do not turn psychotic. Claire does not try to imitate Chris because she misses him. In fact, Claire gives up her lighter to Rodrigo, something that was only of sentimental value to Claire because she is not a smoker. She keeps that only as a reminder of Chris. She gives that up to Rodrigo, showing that she does not have an obsession. Notice in the original game, Claire goes to Paris looking for Chris. But that is not a segment of the game you can play. And I am with Ink Ribbon on this, that should be a segment of the game you can play one time where you're not escaping from zombies. You're actually escaping from humans. So put a stealth element to the game. Yeah, Capcom, stealth. Yeah, that's very surprising, isn't it? It's in The Last of Us. Why should it be in a Code Veronica remake? Okay, but the part of the game that you start playing, okay, that you need to focus on, Claire in Code Veronica does not look for Chris. Claire in Code Veronica, when you start the game, is trying to escape. Notice, in Darkside Chronicles, they actually fixed that. Okay, because Claire mentions that, she's looking for information, and then she types on the computer herself looking for Chris. Okay, and by the way, they fixed this in Darkside Chronicles, but Darkside Chronicles is not canonical because of one line Chris mentions in Resident Evil 5. Yes, I finally found it. Chris mentions he met Wesker again in Rockford Island. This is something that only happens in Darkside Chronicles. This is something that only happens in Code Veronica. Darkside Chronicles, you do not see this happen. In fact, Darkside Chronicles, when Wesker leaves the knife, Chris figures out that someone left him a message. That's why he says, I'm pretty sure I know who it belongs to. He doesn't say Wesker straight up. And it almost sounds like Claire doesn't know who Wesker is in Darkside Chronicles. So yes, there you go. Rockford Island, Chris mentioning that, confirms that Darkside Chronicles is not canonical. And that has severe implications, by the way. And notice, in the original game, yeah, Claire is still someone who's trying to escape, but who actually was looking for Chris for 3 months across 2 continents. Steve Burnside, without even trying, finds Chris in 5 minutes and even suggests Chris be sent a distress message just as a joke, which actually ended up saving her life from the Antarctica prison base, or the Antarctica Spencer Mansion, or pseudo fake Spencer Mansion base, because of Claire sending a distress message to Chris via Leon, because of an idea Steve gave her. Okay, the fact that Steve found Chris for Claire in 5 minutes, they need to make this a big deal for Claire, and this needs to be the point where Claire starts to appreciate Steve and what he did, in a matter of no time for Claire. Upon, maybe just their first or second meeting. They need to make this have a lot of value for Claire. For Claire, Steve needs to have a lot of positive points because of this. That was point number 2. Point number 3. Claire needs to express how she feels and her emotions a lot more verbally, or maybe through internal monologue. When she discovers the relationship between Alfred and Alexia. Okay? A simple line here or there that you saw in Darkside Chronicles, it doesn't count. They need to go a lot more deeper into this. Okay? Take inspiration from The Last of Us Part 1. Take inspiration from God of War 2018. Because this type of verbal storytelling was one of the strongest points of both of those games. They need to do that with Code Veronica, considering Code Veronica focuses a lot on the story. Number 4. Okay. They can go, story-wise, 3 possible routes. Okay. The first route is the original route. For this, the first thing they need to fix is make Steve more tolerable. Okay. Please remove the attempted kiss scene. Okay. In the seaplane, remove that attempted kiss scene. Claire calling Alfred, so and so freak. I don't have a problem with it. I don't. Because you have to keep context in mind. Okay, but remove that attempted kiss scene. Replace that with Steve just looking at Claire and smiling for a few seconds, indicating that he appreciates Claire's support and teamwork through this entire ordeal. Then he switches his attention back to determining where they are at that moment in the plane. However, Steve has to turn into a monster and come very close to killing Claire in the absence of Chris. Not in front of Chris, in the absence of Chris. Okay, because there the point of focus is two people. Okay, so the audience focus will be more concentrated on the story told between those two people. Okay, so that needs to happen, and Steve needs to just at the very last moment refrain himself from killing Claire and then saving her life. And Claire needs to see this, needs to see that she was about to be decapitated, but something within Steve stopped the monster Steve from taking her head off. Okay? Something like the original, but not as corny or not as cheesy. Then, through body language at least, and through vocal patterns, Claire has to indicate that at that point she has started to develop some romantic feelings for Steve. Okay, because this is exactly what happens in the original. Okay, and the evidence of that is in the previous video titled "What Did Steve Mean to Claire?" A detailed response to Alyson Court. Okay, and no, in the original, Claire never treated Steve like a younger brother, showing her how to survive a biohazard, regardless of how inaccurately Alyson Court recalls both Code Veronica and Dark Side Chronicles. Then, Steve needs to die confessing his love for Claire. Okay, this is another thing that was not there in Dark Side Chronicles. Claire doesn't know about Steve's emotions for her. Okay, and this is one of the many ways how Dark Side Chronicles is the inferior, significantly inferior version of Code Veronica. I don't have a problem Code Veronica is long. I have a problem Dark Side Chronicles is stupid or is inferior. Okay. And this love confession, it really, really needs to hurt Claire. Just like the original. And it really does. And the evidence for this is all throughout the video titled "The Original Claire Redfield Story Everyone Missed." A tragedy survivor, not a badass anymore. But in case you missed it, this one event broke her. It mentally broke Claire Redfield. Because notice very carefully, Claire does not end Code Veronica X triumphant. Claire ends Code Veronica X defeated. This backwards journey from strong to broken needs to happen in Code Veronica X remake. Okay? And this is another thing that is missing from Dark Side Chronicles. So, Inkribbon, I'm surprised you did not figure this out. That Code Veronica is actually so unique that its main protagonist ended the game defeated. So yes, Claire's focal point in Code Veronica, Claire's main story, Claire's background story, the dynamic between Claire and Steve is 200% a love story that ends in tragedy, where what ends up happening is, in Claire's mind, Steve ends up returning her feelings in the worst way possible. Like, with his dying breath. And for those who think that, that doesn't happen and whatnot, that pattern was not seen anywhere. Listen, the first Metal Gear Solid, wasn't it also about family? Liquid Snake, family reasons he's there. Solid Snake, family reasons he's there. Meryl Silverberg's family reason she's there. Otacon, family reasons he's there. Psycho Mantis, family reasons he's there. Sniper Wolf, family reasons she's there. How many love stories are there in Metal Gear Solid 1? There are 2 love stories in Metal Gear Solid 1. And if you count Meryl and Johnny Sasaki, there are 3 love stories. Because in Metal Gear Solid 4, Johnny Sasaki said he always loved her ever since Shadow Moses. Shadow Moses was Metal Gear Solid 1. Okay, so don't tell me this that in a game focus on family, two of the protagonists cannot fall in love with each other. It happened in Metal Gear Solid, and it happened in Code Veronica as well. And just to add to this, like the last scene with the Harrier when, man, I get it, man. Like I have some knowledge of psychology because due to my academics, I have some slightly above average knowledge of psychology and how the human brain actually functions in times of comfort and trauma and despair. Okay, so maybe that's how I understand it a bit better. But that last scene where Claire is slowly moving a trembling, very important, they have to keep that hand trembling, a trembling left hand on the back of Chris's seat, and asks Chris not to leave her alone again. Yeah, the facial expression is all right, but the voice, have Claire's voice shiver a little bit, indicating that she is trying not to burst out crying, because that's what her body language and facial expressions show in Code Veronica and Code Veronica X, that she's actually trying not to explode into tears. Okay, so have that also consistent with the vocal patterns as well. That would be a good improvement. This tragedy, this specific tragedy, is why Claire Redfield is the only person who did not join BSAA or Stratcom. Okay, and I pointed this out in great detail in my original Claire Redfield story everyone missed video. Okay, so refer back to that and see how many times the aftermath of Steve's loss gets referenced in in Degenerations and in Revelations 2 that I came across. Okay, this tragedy is also the one thing that makes Claire the deepest character amongst all original protagonists in Resident Evil. Without it, she is just like everyone else. She is generic. And Claire Redfield is anything but generic. With this tragedy, all the pieces are there for her to be upgraded from Resident Evil to Daredevil or Batman. Scenario B. Have Rodrigo be the one to escort and then rescue Claire. And Rodrigo viewing Claire as his younger sister, and Claire growing to view Rodrigo as a surrogate elder brother. Then, with his dying breath, Rodrigo says that he viewed Claire as family because he lost his own family, but it looks like he's going to see his family again. Scenario C. Have Claire contact Leon to come rescue her from the island and wait. Because what happens in both DSC and Code Veronica, Claire sends the distress message, and then what happens? Claire and Steve leave, causing Leon or Chris to actually go to Rockford Island, finding that they already left, and then going to another place to find them. This all could have been avoided if Claire and Steve just waited. Then, when Leon and Chris show up, have them team up and defeat the Ashfords and Wesker. Shout out to Raven Draws, a YouTuber, Raven Draws, for providing this idea. Okay, so that's the story done. Now let's take a closer look at how the characters need to be remade. Number one, highlight a bit more on Alexia's genius, because apparently Alexia was a child prodigy and she was a genius. So highlight that a bit more, and her relationship to Alfred, not the worker ant version, the loving sister version. Number two, if Alexia is to be the final boss or something, have her at least mention that she is actually avenging Alfred's death. In neither version does she mention anything along the lines of she is avenging Alfred's death. Number 3, if possible, have Alexia survive Code Veronica, setting up a Code Veronica trilogy. And yes, the idea of a Code Veronica trilogy, I mentioned this in the original Claire Redfield story Everyone Missed video. Finally, number 4. Yes, I'm a Muslim, but I'm saying this just as a figure of speech, so don't take it the wrong way. I'm probably going to get crucified for this. Okay, but hear me out. Have Alyson Court voice Alexia Ashford, not Layla Johnson. Okay, because man, I want to see her play a sadistic villain. Because I'm very sure deep down inside, Alyson Court is probably tired of being typecast. And me personally, I'm tired of seeing her typecast as a children's programming specialist. She's either playing a child or playing someone with a childish personality or playing someone who is a child at heart to an extent, such as Claire Redfield. Okay? Because see. This is a good thing and a bad thing. The most complex character she has played in a prominent role. I'm not talking about, what's that Fairview Heights knockoff, not the F grade version, the Z grade version of South Park, dating guy. I think Alyson Court was in 2 episodes, and even there she has a childish personality. I'm not talking about and Alyson, if you're hearing this, no disrespect to you, but come on, you could have done better with this. I'm not talking about Sunny Skies. Yes, I had to dig it out what it is, and then I figured out why it is buried. That it needed some digging, because once I saw Sunny Skies, I'm like, oh my god, save me, RoboCop Prime Directives. Yes, it is significantly worse than RoboCop Prime Directives. Okay, yeah, which also, by the way, is a Canadian production. But why I suggest Alyson Court? Okay, because if she's given this role, I think she can finally break the shackles of being the generic, lovable, childish, goody two-shoes voice or character. I mean, look at Luke Skywalker. Okay, no one thought he would make a good Joker, or I don't think people expected him to make a good Joker, but he made the best version of Joker ever. The Mark Hamill version. Yeah, so if they do this with Code Veronica, have Alyson Court voice Alexia Ashford. I would really like to see what she does. Okay, I had to get to this because she is the main character in the game. So I have to talk about, character-wise, how they're going to improve Claire. Okay. First, do not use anything from Darkside Chronicles. Okay? That's the inferior game. Do not use anything from Darkside Chronicles. And that's not canonical anyways. Number 2, focus more on Claire's emotional, reactive side. Okay? That she is actually an empath, or she is very empathetic and sympathetic to people. Okay? Have this done through dialogue exchange or at least internal monologues. Number 3, do not use the Darkside Chronicles model. Okay? The Darkside Chronicles model, I don't know what they put together. I don't know what that thing is, okay? She looks like a 15-year-old girl with the nose of a 45-year-old. Because there's one scene where she's looking sideways. And like me, I'm legally blind, so I can see little. I'm thinking, wait a minute, what's that coffee mug handle looking thing? Then when I actually use my screen magnifier to zoom in, I'm like, oh my god, that's her nose? Why does she have such a big nose? She's 19. Okay. Number 4, in terms of her voice actress, there are 2 people. First is Laura Bailey, and I bring her up because, I call her the great Laura Bailey. because she is versatile in almost any voice, and all the voices she does, she delivers like very well. But more specifically, she voiced Supergirl in Injustice 2. Okay? She can use that voice for Claire Redfield. Second, second person, Felicia Day. I bring up Felicia Day because she voiced Veronica, ironically enough, in Fallout New Vegas. And if you know Veronica's character and personality, a lot of it reminds you of Claire Redfield. Trust me, a lot of it. That innocence, that sass, that caring nature, that willing to help other people, that connection to family. Yeah, a lot of it reminds you of Claire Redfield. Now, one reason I don't want Alyson Court as Claire Redfield, and I am surprised people did not figure this out because, like, oh my god, maybe the Resident Evil fan base, a lot of them, they don't think, or they don't pay attention, closely enough. Code Veronica, and this is why I wanted to speak to, I wanted to pay to speak to Alyson Court for, discussing Code Veronica. Code Veronica is the only time that I have seen where Alyson Court does not sound Canadian. And I have heard Alyson Court talk. Good Lord, if she sounded any more Canadian, the top and bottom halves of her head would split like the South Park animation. She sounds very, very Canadian. And this is something I don't think she can pull off anymore. Because in Dark Side Chronicles, she sounded very Canadian. In Degeneration, she sounded very Canadian. Even in Resident Evil 2, if you pay close attention, you can tell that voice is of a Canadian actress. In Code Veronica, it's very hard to say that the voice of Claire is Canadian. And this goes to show that Alyson Court worked extra hard for Code Veronica because even she perceived there is a deeper type of storytelling in Code Veronica and has the potential to be something big. Now moving to Steve Burnside. Number one, expand upon his family history and why he's close to his mom or dad or whatever. Okay, because you need to tell Steve's story for the audience to connect with him. Okay. Second, expand upon his imprisonment there and what they were planning to do with him. Okay. Yeah, there are bits and pieces in the novelization, but the novelization is not canon. Okay, I want to see this in the actual game. Number 3, do not use Darkside Chronicles Steve. I don't know why Ink Ribbon said that Steve is fixed. Whereas Steve actually he became worse. Much worse than the Bill Houston Steve. Okay? Okay, I'll give you a prime example of this. Okay. In Darkside Chronicles, Steve is constantly flirting with Claire. In Code Veronica, Steve hardly ever flirts with Claire. Okay? This is because it makes more sense. A biohazard is not the place to flirt. Okay. I explained in great detail why that "don't worry Claire, your knight in shining armor is here." That is not flirting or that is not flexing. In my video, What Did Steve Mean to Claire? A detailed response to Alyson Court. I explained very well, in great detail, why that is not flirting. So please refer to that if you're going to bring that up. And the line, if you're going to bring it up, where Steve calls Claire beautiful. Yeah, if you think that's flirting, notice how Steve constantly tries to stay away from Claire and constantly tries to condescend to her. This is not consistent behavior of someone flirting with a girl. Someone flirting with a girl would want to spend more time with the girl. Okay? So I'm honestly surprised people did not catch this. Okay, another prime example of this is in this line. No, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use any copyrighted material because I don't want another strike. Okay, until this one's taken down. Okay, in the original, in the English version, Steve says, "I don't want you following me, lady. You'll only slow me down." In the Japanese version, Steve actually says, "I don't like being followed. Women have their legs tied together anyways." Basically saying that women are so slow that they're running a one, that they're running a one man or one person potato, the potato sack race with both legs in the potato sack. Okay, the yeah, for a guy that's flirting with a girl, that is not something you say to a girl you're flirting with. So this constant condescending of Steve to Claire, especially towards the beginning, before Steve had to kill his dad, his zombie dad, only means one thing. Steve views Claire as a bimbo. However, now looking back at Code Veronica, I can actually appreciate what they tried to do with Steve but failed in the execution. Steve was actually grieving over the loss of both his mom and his dad, deep down inside. And that is why he couldn't think straight. This is why he apologizes to Claire in the seaplane because he realized Steve's problem, it has nothing to do with Claire. So he has no reason to treat her badly. And that is why he apologizes, in the seaplane. So given this complete sea of despair and trauma and loss, he finds this Claire Redfield person who is helping her, helping him, who is kind to him, who is nice to him, who's putting up with his nonsense, and who he finds that he can trust and rely on. And this relying on other people, this is something that is very pivotal to Steve, especially in Code Veronica. And this is why, in this clouded mind, you have positive and negative emotions all fighting each other in Steve's mind. This is why he falls in love with Claire in one day. That does not excuse the attempted kiss scene. That attempted kiss scene is still cringe, but this makes Code Veronica Steve a lot more tolerable than a Steve that is constantly flirting with Claire despite having lost family, and after the war, the war monster battle, goes back to flirting with Claire. Don't you think? The Code Veronica Steve is a bit more realistic in this regard, don't you think? For some reason, I thought that I was the only one who got this. I was one of the very few people who got this. But doing some research, watching some other videos, I found out that the Japanese audience, a lot of the Japanese audience got this immediately. That this was the story, the tragic love story where Steve actually ends up returning Claire's romantic feelings, but magnified and in the worst way possible. This is what Capcom intended, but almost everyone in the Western media missed this. As for Steve's voice, now, honestly, if I could bring people back from the dead, for this voice, I would put Jonathan Brandis. This is because Jonathan Brandis played an amazing Mosenrath. And by the way, maybe this is for another video, but the Aladdin animated show, it had so much potential for movie adaptation, especially with people like Mirage, Mosenrath, and Chaos. But yeah, given that we can't get Jonathan Brandis, I think Bill Houston deserves a chance to redeem himself, so I would bring back Bill Houston. Moving on to Rodrigo. 1. They need to expand upon his character a lot. Okay, they need to give his own scenario campaign. Then Capcom needs to give him his own scenario campaign. This is because a lot of people don't highlight that Rodrigo is actually mourning the loss of his family as well. It's why he wanted to be left alone. They need to focus on this. Number two, they need to focus on the dialogue exchanges between Claire and Rodrigo, because Claire was under Rodrigo's custody for at least 10 days, or that's what you're led to believe. Because if I'm not mistaken, he was the one who actually captured Claire in the first place, like from the Paris facility. Or maybe I might be mistaken there, but they need to focus a lot more on the conversations between Rodrigo and Claire. Number three, his voice actor. Okay, this video is not linked in the description, but look it up and show this guy some love, Chorus. Okay, Kamran Nikad. Watch Resident Evil Code Veronica, all parts, then you'll see what I mean. The guy that voiced Rodrigo is the same guy that voiced Albert Wesker. You will his name is Kamran Nikad, and you will see how good Kamran Nikad is. And by God, he has earned a spot in the actual Resident Evil game. Albert Wesker. They need to expand, number one, they need to expand on his character a lot more. For instance, why did he join HCF? Why did he specifically attack that island? Did he have any interactions with Albert Wesker? So on and so forth. Number two, they need to stick to the Japanese version, especially when it comes to the dialogue. For example, okay, in the English version, he says, "Greetings, you must be the lovely Claire Redfield." Okay? So maybe he's being sarcastic there because, Wesker doesn't care really. In the Japanese version, he says, "Greetings, you must be the younger sister Claire Redfield." I think the Japanese version, it actually, is more appropriate because Wesker is there with revenge on his mind, and his revenge is he wants to kill Chris. So he saw Claire as a conduit to hurt Chris. Number three, if they go the route of Steve dying and whatnot, and Wesker taking his body, they need to show that actually happened. And also, Wesker needs to be a bit more of a prick about it, making fun of Steve's sacrifice to Claire, just so that this will hurt Claire and infuriate her, and as a proxy, also infuriate Chris. Okay, this is Wesker basically playing mind games to actually make Chris mad. Number four, his voice actor, please, no Richard Waugh, no DC Douglas, no. They sound like radio announcers. Okay, one, either Kamran Nikad, or two, Dave B. Mitchell. Okay, Dave B. Mitchell is, I still say, one of the most underrated voice actors, in gaming right now, regardless of how many games he made. Okay, he should be the main villain of one of them. Moving on to Alfred Ashford. Number one, expand upon his history with Alexia. Why Alfred idolized Alexia. Number two, turn Alfred even more psychotic. Okay? Have him turn into like a psychological sadist that he enjoys watching people physically and psychologically and emotionally suffer. Okay, like take inspiration from the classic Batman the Animated Series, Joker, Mad Hatter, and Scarecrow. I go into a bit more detail on what this looks like in my upcoming review of The Evil Within, which is coming after March 5th. Number four, his voice, I believe, either needs to be Richard Cancino or Richard Epcar. Okay, so now moving to Chris. Number one, he needs to show more anger when it comes to confronting Wesker. Maybe even start swearing, because in the original series, right up to Revelations 2, The Redfields don't swear, especially Claire, and I think even Chris. Well, Chris a bit more, but Claire, she doesn't swear easily unless she is pushed. She doesn't casually swear. So maybe like have Chris start swearing at Wesker, show more anger, especially like it comes across like Wesker and a crying Claire. Number two, there needs to be some cutscenes or some dialogue or some flashbacks or something that refers back to what happened between Resident Evil 1 and Code Veronica. Because in both versions, that gaping hole in the story of Chris still remains. So the remake of Code Veronica needs to address that. Number three, I don't know about you guys, but for me in the original, Chris needed to show a bit more urgency for looking for Claire in Rockford. Like, yeah, it was there, but it kind of got lost from time to time. Okay, number four, Wesker needs to have some dialogue about events involving Chris needs to have some dialogues referring back to Wesker's betrayal of Chris. Yes, I'm doing this in one take, with pauses, but still one take. And especially, just allude to that to Claire, because in both versions, Claire doesn't know who Wesker is. And that is, in Code Veronica, that is so surprising. When Wesker says, let's just say I'm a ghost coming back to haunt your dear brother. Claire doesn't say Chris. Claire says Wesker? As if she heard of Wesker. Then her next dialogue, I don't know what went on between you two, but you have him all wrong. My brother's not the kind of person you think he is. Okay. Then how do you know that this is Wesker? And how do you know that Wesker is dead? And how do you know that something happened between Chris and Wesker? And how do you know that Wesker is big mad at Chris? If you don't know what happened between them two? Okay. So Chris needs to provide that explanation, or there needs to be some type of flashback or something that at least gives Claire this information that something sinister and unforgivable happened between Chris and Wesker. As far as his voice acting, if you can get Michael Flipowick, get Michael Flipowick. I thought he was a pretty decent Chris Redfield. And finally, please have Chris look like the Resident Evil Code Veronica Chris in terms of body tone. Don't have him look like Gorilla Grodd, okay, from Injustice 2, because I believe a lot of people say that in Resident Evil 5 he looks like a gorilla. I am not gonna say he looks like Bane, because Bane would wipe the floor with Chris many times over, okay, because of his superior intellect. Anyways, those are my 2 cents on how a Resident Evil Code Veronica remake could work. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you agree or disagree, and with which points you agree or disagree, and let's have a healthy discussion about the matter. Alright, looking forward to your comments and suggestions, and as always, hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification button. This is your boy Tanveer Side, the Bengal Dragon, signing out. And once again, Ink Ribbon, thank you for the video that motivated me to make this video, basically in 1 hour.